Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live today from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios. Happy New Year 2025. Boy, it's exciting. I think, I hope, I don't know. Ian is here today. Hello, Ian. Happy New Year.
What up, what up? Happy New Year to everyone.
Happy New Year to everyone. By the way, today was supposed to be the day we were back for 4 hours. Unfortunately, that'll have to wait another day because the Sugar Bowl has been postponed to 3 o'clock today. So we will take you right up to the start of the Sugar Bowl between Georgia and A&M right here on 102.5 The Game. And then we will be back with a little break in at halftime. Do we even know, Ian, how long halftime is? Is it 20 minutes, 18 minutes?
I'm not sure. I'll have to double check.
We'll be back on at halftime for whatever that make of that. So I want to get right down to the nitty gritty because I didn't come on after that butt kicking that the Indianapolis Colts gave the Titans. That the Titans scored a bunch of garbage time points on it. Oh, we were so close, Jared. But that was a butt kicking, an embarrassment. The coach defended the team for not being soft, and then they went out there and they gave up 300 rushing yards. Not a good sign. And I was not on the air on Monday after Jacksonville beat the Titans, swept the season series, and proved that, well, if you look at the power rankings, you're 32nd. And yet, it feels, based off of what people in the media are saying and kind of reporting, but not reporting, like Amy Adams Strunk actually wants to do this all over again here in 2025. It feels like the media is trying to prepare us for the idea that Ran Carthon, Chad Brinker, and Brian Callahan, the authors of this godforsaken season, will be back this fall. First, it was PK, Paul Kaharski. Then it was TD. Both saying, hey, I'm hearing there's not a lot of major changes that are coming down the pipe for this football team as far as Carthon, Brinker, and Callahan are concerned. Then there was Ian Rappaport over the weekend who said that it's likely Callahan will return in 2025. Basically put in his article at NFL.com, well, maybe they'll just pin all of this on Colt Anderson, the special teams coach. Then today, there's Jeremy Fowler at ESPN behind the paywall who wrote this, quote, the Titans are 9-24 in GM's Ran Carthon's first two seasons, and with a new stadium opening in 2026, by the way, it's opening in 2027, but it's my note. Opening in 2026, the Titans want to find the winning track sooner rather than later. But this was clearly a rebuilding situation for Carthon, and people in the building say there seems to be good energy. Ian, did you hear that? Good energy.
Yes, very good.
Very good energy amongst Callahan, Carthon, and Vice President of Football Operations, Chad Brinker. By the way, Chad Brinker is the President of Football Operations for Jeremy Fowler. He writes, a trio that meets frequently on the team. Well, I hope they would meet frequently on the team. That's their only job. So now we have another person kind of indicating that there may not be major changes after, again, an abomination of a football season. And I just have to ask one question that can really be summed up by one word. How? How? How can we live through the past year where this time last year, we didn't know what the Titans were going to do? Then they fired Mike Vrabel, a very controversial decision. Then they hired Brian Callahan. Then the offseason of toxic positivity set in. The vibes in the building were great. The coaching staff is incredible. The teaching tape that Bill Callahan put together was just unbelievable. Everybody was working in unison. Everybody was working together. Everybody was doing everything together. And so I'm trying to figure out right here, when it comes to the Titans, and I mean this in all seriousness, I am trying to figure out how in the world, after all that positivity, we can get a 3-14 season, lose to Jacksonville twice, and Amy Adams Strunk can say, I want another helping of this. And again, I don't care what the media has to say about this. They all told us Vrabel was coming back last year. He wasn't. So let's keep that in mind. But again, the word I keep using what I keep trying to understand is how. How can John Robinson get the boot when the team is 7-5 coming off of 3 straight playoff seasons, but the guys who have 2 straight last place finishes are just fine? How can Mike Vrabel get canned for winning 6 games with a bad roster? Because that was, as the owner said in her own words, unacceptable. But Brian Callahan stays for winning half of the games with a more expensive roster. How can Mike Mularkey get fired for winning 19 games when you include the playoffs? And we should, because the playoffs actually matter. How can Mike Mularkey get fired for winning 19 games in 2 years because that wasn't good enough, but 9 games in 2 seasons for Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker is good enough? She fired Ken Wisenhunt midway through his 2nd season when it was obvious things weren't getting better. And it was basically the same team. They were the worst team in the league. They had no right tackle. That's where the right tackle story was born in April of 2015, because the old man could look at it and say, they don't have a right tackle, they're going to suck. So how can Amy Adams Strunk, again, the word I keep coming back to, how? How can she do a 180 and all of a sudden turn into the Bengals when Marvin Lewis every year got another opportunity? How? I need a real explanation. Well, Jared, 2 years is not long enough to flip this team. It was long enough for John Robinson and Mike Mularkey to take the worst team in the league. 3 wins, just like this team. 3 wins, no right tackle, no impact game-changing superstar players. Jarrell Casey and Delaney Walker were good players. They weren't superstars. It took them 2 years to flip this thing into a playoff team. But in 2 years, Rand Carthon, and they can't do anything, and they can't be held accountable for it? What happened to checking every box this offseason? So again, I need a real explanation. And I've been fighting with people on Twitter because, again, I've been off for like 2 weeks, and I got to get it out. I have been fighting with some people that are like, it's all John Robinson's fault. Even though Washington missed in the first round in 2020. They had the number 2 pick, and they missed. And they missed in 2021 with Jamin Davis. And they missed in 2022 with Jahan Dotson. And they missed in 2023 with Emmanuel Forbes. They're not even on the team anymore. And yet they're good. I don't get it. I don't understand. How could anything that this Titans team has done in the last year have been good enough to warrant another helping of it? Here we are the last week of the year, and everybody, even the anti-tank people, are saying, please lose this game so you don't end up picking 7th or 8th in the draft. And that's acceptable? After the owner said that last year, where they won double the games, was not acceptable? After she told the fans that bright days were ahead, sooner rather than later were her words. And now we're being told, wait. It's unbelievable. Now, again, I'm not sure these words are coming from Amy. When PK says, I did some fishing and I hear there's not, and TD says, I've heard there's not some changing, and I don't think that's coming from Amy. And I remember when Burke Nihill, who was the team president CEO, I remember when he came in our studio in October of 2022, I want to say late October of 2022. And he ended an hour sit down we did talking about the new stadium. He ended it by saying, hey, John Robinson and Mike Vrabel, they're great at what they do, and they're doing a great job in there. And on he left. And a month and a half later, Robinson was fired. So maybe that's where this is coming from. And he's going to say everybody's doing great until they fire him. He's a lawyer. That's what lawyers do. I don't know. But again, they are trying to condition everybody to think, hey, Amy Adams Strunk's going to give us another helping of what we had the last year. And I just do not understand how any of us could be stupid enough to believe that this is the right path for this team, and how any of them could be stupid enough, and I'm talking about her and Kenneth and Barclay and all of them, how they could be stupid enough to think that these guys are going to get this football team on the right track. I mean, that Jacksonville team they played Sunday is god awful. They just lost to the Raiders, and they swept you with a backup quarterback. You suck. There's nothing positive. So, what are we doing here? Well, I mean, in all seriousness, give me a how. How can the same people that said John Robinson wasn't doing a good enough job, how can they say that this group is? How can the same people that said Mike Mularkey's playoff win, his 2 years of winning records, not good enough? Mike Vrabel, 6 wins last year, not good enough, even though he's a former coach of the year. But this, 3 wins this year, losing to Jacksonville twice, getting embarrassed by Indianapolis, having a soft team, which the Titans are. Come in our locker room and say we're soft. I'm saying it on the radio. We got our ratings back. We're doing great. Everybody can hear it. And I'm telling you right now, they're soft. How can this be good enough? And that's the one word I keep coming back to. How? 615-737-1025. If you got phones, get them in now because we're only on for an hour. And then again, the report today from Jeremy Fowler. And again, we use the word report. The report today from Jeremy Fowler, I want to get to that next. Stillman & Company, 1025 The Game. And let me tell all the fine folks once again at 3 o'clock today, the Sugar Bowl right here. And our coverage is presented by Twin Peaks and Parmer Tractor and Equipment, as it is Notre Dame and Georgia kickoff at 3 o'clock. And then Sunday, be sure to join us for the award-winning pregame show, as we'll be at John Bon Jovi's in downtown this Sunday from 9:30 to 11:30. The award-winning pregame show presented by Parman Tractor and Equipment, Sundeck Nashville, Sloan's Motorcycle ATV, and award-winning Blue Note Juke Joint and Blue Note Crossroads Bourbon.
There's a report over the weekend, I think from the NFL Network, that said you and your staff were likely to be back next year. Wondering, is that an accurate reflection of maybe conversations that you've had with Amy at this point?
Yeah, I'll keep those to myself. But I think that every conversation I've had has been positive. We have conversations that are needed to be had, and that goes with Rand and Chad as well. Those, I don't really pay much mind to those reports. I just come in and try to do my job as best I can, and and do it as long as they allow me to do it. And if for some reason at some point, and hopefully it's years from now, that someone says we don't need your services anymore, then that's how it goes. But I don't pay too much attention to the good or the bad reports, to be totally honest. There's been plenty of negative ones too, I think. So I just try to keep doing my job and let all the other stuff handle itself, and just continue to communicate and have the conversations needed to try to improve our football team. So don't put too much stock in them, to be honest.
There you go. That was Brian Callahan on Monday saying, the reports, I can't handle that. I'm just doing my job. I'm just coaching. Let me say this. Brian Callahan is a much better at being politically correct with his answers and being nice to people than he is at coaching, at least through 1 year. And I know, I think I heard Paul was like, Don Shula had a bad first year. Yeah. Well, it's a different era. The collective bargaining agreements are different. The contracts are shorter. But also, if you had to bet right now, yes or no, is Brian Callahan Don Shula? I would comfortably bet no. But I go back to the Jeremy Fowler report that came out today from ESPN. Ian, I don't know if can we use this is this a report or is this conjecture, or what would you call this?
I don't know. That's a good question. I'm not exactly sure where it falls into the official pantheon there.
So remember how a couple weeks ago, Jeremy Fowler reported that the Titans were benching Will Levis and going with Mason Rudolph, and brought up again, when it comes to the world of conjecture, that the Titans could be in play for Aaron Rodgers. And I said, look, he's got his hook somewhere in the organization if you're breaking that kind of news. Today, Fowler, and this was with a giant list of stuff between him and Dan Graziano, the stuff that you have to pay for at ESPN.com and ESPN Plus, said the Titans are 9-24 in Carthon's first two seasons, and with a new stadium opening in 2026, Titans want to find the sooner track rather than later. Sooner rather than later. But this was clearly a rebuilding situation for Carthon, and people in the building say there seems to be good energy amongst Callahan, Carthon, and Vice President of Football Operations Chad Brinker, a trio that meets frequently on the team. And I read that, and I said to myself, because Adam Vingan sent it to me this morning, and I thought after I read it, this was clearly a rebuilding year for Rand Carthon. Really? Because he traded a third-round pick for an injured corner, who, by the way, TD said today on Twitter, L'Jarius Sneed had surgery.
Say it was bad.
What?
This is a bad quad.
A bad quad strain? Do you want to get me going on this? Because I did talk to a doctor who works on NFL players, including players on the Titans. I did talk to a doctor about this today. And
let her rip, Tater Chip.
I mean, here you go. I said, do you buy that L'Jarius strain do you buy that a quad strain in early October knocked L'Jarius Sneed out of the entire season alone? He said, not unless it was a grade 3, which is a complete tear, and they were just saying strain for gamesmanship or something. I said, Brian Callahan said the original diagnosis was a 3-week injury that didn't get better. Ian, back me up on that. That is what Brian Callahan said.
I think so. I'd have to go back and check.
He said, if me and his doctor were talking, we would use the term grade 3 quad strain. But if I was telling you about it, I would say he completely tore his quad. Sounds to me like he probably re-injured it during rehab. And if you do that a time or two, it really stretches out recovery. But if the initial injury was a 3-week prognosis, that's a pretty minor one, something fishy there to me. And then I kind of laid out for this doctor the entire story about the degenerative knee issue in Kansas City and Minnesota pulling their offer, and the Titans saying, it's fine, it's fine. And how it was a helmet to the quad, and then it was a quad strain, and then it was and he said, yeah, they're lying, LOL. Oh, goodness gracious. And then I sent him the tweet from TD earlier today that L'Jarius Sneed had a quad that had surgery or whatever on his leg. And I said, surgery for a 3-week quad strain? He said either it was a fully ruptured quad or they're BSing. Again, more Titan bullcrap. But I go back to this Jeremy Fowler conjecture report, whatever you want to call it. This sounds to me like this is their pitch. Whoever's talking to Fowler, whether it's Carthon, Brinker, or Callahan, and I don't know who it is, but this sounds to me like this is their pitch to Amy. That this is their pitch to the fans. That this is, again, I don't know who it is. It's probably Brinker, if I had to guess, because it sounds like Brinker does a lot of talking. This is probably their pitch. Amy, this was clearly a rebuilding situation, even though every word out of their mouth before the ball got kicked off against Chicago was the exact opposite. Whether it was her or Brinker or Rand or Callahan, every word was the opposite of this was a rebuilding situation. You don't trade third-round draft choices for injured corners if you're rebuilding. But again, that's the pitch now. People in the building say there's good energy between Callahan, Carthon, and Brinker, a trio that meets frequently on the team. Again, I would hope that they meet frequently on the team. That's their only job. This isn't college sports, and these guys aren't athletic directors where it's, well, we've got football and basketball and women's basketball and baseball and tennis and field hockey and swimming and diving and track and field, and you only got one sport. What the hell else are they doing if they're not meeting to talk about it? It's a GM and a coach. Their offices are next to each other. So again, when it comes to this, I don't think he's talking to Amy. And the only thing that I think matters is what Amy decides at the end of the year. And I don't think anybody who's reported anything is talking to Amy. Now, maybe they've talked to people who have talked to Amy, but I don't think they're talking to Amy. And with Amy, it's, I love you today, goodbye tomorrow. It's like an episode of The Sopranos. And Tony keeps it close to the vest as to who's not going to be around very long. 615-737-1025. Let's go to your phones, which are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Let's start with Michael, who's going to kick us off today on the program. Thank you for calling. Go ahead, Michael.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. Yeah, I appreciate it. I feel like that even regardless of what pick we get, whether we win on Sunday or we lose on Sunday, we get the number 1 pick, we get the number 7 pick. I don't trust this front office to make the right decision regardless of where we're picking. I mean, think if we take a quarterback or whoever with the number 1 overall pick, if we trade down and get more picks, I mean, every trade that Carthon has made so far has objectively been bad. I mean, you got the Snead pick, the Snead trade, bad. The DeAndre Hopkins trade, bad. The Jerome Baker, Ernest Jones trade, bad. I just don't. This front office hasn't given me any reason to trust that they're going to make the right decision, regardless if they choose a player with pick 1, pick 7, or trade out of it to get any more picks.
Here's what I would say about this front office that to me is, again, there are so many things. Thank you for calling, Michael. So many things on one side of the argument about how bad they are versus how good they are. The arguments on their good side are John Robinson screwed up. Or, first of all, if John Robinson didn't screw up, they wouldn't have the jobs that they have to begin with. John Robinson would still be the general manager. But that's the first thing, is it's John Robinson's fault. It's Vrabel's fault. Rand didn't want that guy. Rand didn't pick that guy. Callahan didn't pick the quarterback. It's all, don't blame me, is the only argument for them. The arguments against them, whether it is the record, which is terrible, whether it is the record in the division, which not only is terrible, the division record, but the teams in the division are terrible. Houston is the division champion, and I hate to say it, but if you've watched Houston play over the last month and a half, they suck. Indianapolis sucks. Jacksonville sucks. And you're worst. The only reason you don't have the number 1 pick in the draft, and I believe you'd have it locked up, was because you beat the Patriots at home by 3 points in overtime, and the coach cried after the game. But today, the Pro Bowl teams came out. See how many Pro Bowlers you have on your team? 0. 0 Pro Bowlers. So with 2 draft classes under their belts and $230 million in free agent money, they have not acquired one Pro Bowler. What's good? He's saying, I don't trust this administration to make the pick at number 2 overall. I agree. There's nothing there. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. More of your, we'll hit your phones. We'll do that coming up next because, again, we're out at 3 o'clock for the Sugar Bowl. Stillman and Company, 1025 and 1063 the game. And let me tell all the fine folks out there to tune in to 94.9 The Fan tonight for Vandy women's basketball. The Commodores will take on Georgia at Memorial Gym, 6:30 tip-off pregame at 6:15. Vanderbilt women's basketball is presented by Athletes Unlimited Pro Basketball. Coming to Nashville's Municipal Auditorium February 5th through March 2nd. Go to auprobasketball.com for more details and to purchase tickets. So you're hearing the same thing Paul is hearing, that day after Black Monday or whatever, there will be like a I mean, Amy's not going to do an interview, so it's going to be like a statement.
No. I'm not saying that anybody's speaking. I'm just saying what I've been told is they're not making major changes. A la Rand, a la Chad Brinker, a la Brian Callahan. They're not making major changes.
No! That was TD on our program talking about, hey, I mean, I'm just hearing not major changes. Paul said the same thing. And I'm like, how? Given how bad this is. 615-737-1025. By the way, I don't know if you guys saw this. Buck apparently came out on his live stream show, and Buck said that Callahan will return, or that it is looking like Callahan will return. Nobody wants to say that they will or won't do anything because Diana got burned on that last year, but that it looks like Callahan will return, but ran up in the air. Really? Like, just not a clean sweep? Not a, hey, get a GM in here and let him pick, and we're going to do this again? I mean, I'll take it. I'll settle out of court for Callahan stays. And I have not seen one instance this season from training camp on that would indicate that Brian Callahan's a good coach. I'm not saying he's a bad coach. I'm just telling you, I haven't seen anything that would make me think he's a good coach. But I will take that if it means they get rid of Rand and Brinker. And they get a real football person in here that knows football to run this team. I would take it. I would settle for that out of court. Amy, if you're listening, I will not go as nuts if you do that. I'll still go nuts because I think it's stupid to tell a prospective general manager you have to work with Brian Callahan. And if there's ever been a coach that's deserving of a firing after 1 year, it's Brian Callahan. And I hate to say it, but the only thing about Brian Callahan is he's a nice guy. That's the only positive we've seen this year. That's not enough to keep your job in the NFL, and he knows that. But I'll settle for it out of court. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. One texter says, it was not a clear rebuild. You do not trade your third-round pick if you're rebuilding, and you should be fired. Again, we've been over this. The words that they used from the Dave Rabel was fired on, whether it was the owner, Carthon, Brinker, Callahan, doesn't matter. It was all about competing this season. It was about being good. It was about, I hear Derek and Willie talk about this roster is so bad, the bottom of the roster. They probably told Amy, hey, we probably can't this and we can't. So you mean to tell me that they went to Amy and said, Amy, we're going to stink this year. And she said, okay, guys. And then they told everybody else on all the podcasts, we're going to be great. I just watched Louisville win the Sun Bowl, which is sponsored by Tony the Tiger. I didn't hear so many they're greats during that game that I heard from the Titans this offseason. I mean, come on. Like, what are we doing? When it comes to the Titans and it comes to, oh no, this was a rebuild. This wasn't supposed to be this way. I mean, it's a joke. It's a joke to now say, oh no, well, we weren't supposed to be good. Everybody outside of here thought you weren't going to be good, but you told everybody here you were going to be good. And again, I go back to what they said in the interviews and the positivity and the sunshine pumping and everything else. If none of that matters, if it doesn't matter that Rand Carthon said, we checked every box on offense this year, then what does matter that comes out of his mouth? Like, at some point, doesn't the general manager have to at least have an idea of what he's saying, or do we just dismiss it all the time because, well, it makes us feel bad about our team? Jordan in Nashville says, thoughts on this theory. Carthon and Callahan get to come back, but if they stink or show no progress by week 10, they get booted in the middle of the next year. It also would guarantee the tank for the next GM and a coach to have a fresh start in 2026. Here's what I'll say about that. This is why I'd fire them. Because I think they're going to lose on Sunday. I know there's this fear amongst Titan fans that the Titans are going to win. That, oh God, wouldn't it be so Titans if they won this Texan game? But I do think the Houston Texans after the embarrassment that they had on Christmas Day, I think the Houston Texans are saying, hey, we need a get-right game before we get to the playoffs. So they're going to play their starters, and they're going to try to, not impress anybody, but they're going to try to give themselves some confidence. And the Titans, I think, are tanking this last game because this idea of playing two quarterbacks, I think they both deserve to play. This is the NFL. This is not the Little League World Series where every kid gets to bat. That is a tank. I think both guys get to play. So I think they're going to lose on Sunday, which means the Titans are going to have a top 2 pick, which means they're going to be able to draft a quarterback. We spent all this time talking about, the quarterbacks will be gone by the time they pick, and Sam Darnold staying in Minnesota. What are they going to do? If you have a top 2 pick, you can draft a quarterback. Now, I don't know if these quarterbacks are any good or not, but you'll be able to get one of the 2 quarterbacks at least. So if you say, okay, Callahan comes back, Carthon comes back, but midway through next year, if this team stinks, they're getting the boot. The next general manager and coach will not inherit a clean slate. They will inherit a quarterback that is a top 2 pick. If they pick a quarterback, they will inherit somebody else's quarterback. And I don't know if you guys have been around here long enough, but every time the coach and the GM doesn't pick the quarterback, we always do hey, I don't know if Rand really picked Will Levis or not. I heard Vrabel picked him. Bull crap. Mike Vrabel picking Will Levis. You think Mike Vrabel picked a Mayo pitchman to be his quarterback? Please. But that's what happens around here. We make stuff up. So, again, what happens is I think you're going to hear somebody say something like, it'll be a clean slate if midway through next year. But, again, if you take a quarterback, the next group's committed to that quarterback. It's like the Colts. Anthony Richardson's not going to lose his job unless they're stupid. They're going to go get somebody else in there to go coach him, and then he'll lose his job. One texter says, you better get over it. They're all coming back. They're going to sign a bridge quarterback in the offseason. They're going to draft a quarterback in the first round, and that's just the gist of it. By the way, how about this bridge quarterback nonsense on the broadcast? The Aditi Kinkabale, the sideline reporter, Ian, did you hear that? What she said during the game on Sunday?
A little bit, yeah.
So the job of the sideline reporter is basically useless now. It used to be where they'd send it down to the sideline and they'd ask Bonnie Bernstein, Bonnie, what's going on? Well, he's working on his hamstring on the sideline, but now if anybody gets hurt, they go in the blue tent, so you can't see it anyway. So all the sideline reporter can do is tell you someone's going to the locker room, which we can see with our own eyes anyways, because they'll flash a camera and you'll see somebody with a trainer walk into the locker room. So what they do with the sideline reporters now is they kick it down to them to tell us some soliloquy that we really don't care about. And Aditi Kinkabale on the broadcast on Sunday gave us some story about how Mason Rudolph almost quit football, but instead Mason Rudolph might be the bridge quarterback for next year, according to Brian Callahan. And then Brian Callahan was asked about it on Monday and said, I haven't made that determination. I haven't. If that's the case, somebody's not telling the truth. If Aditi Kinkabale is saying, Brian Callahan's considering him to be the bridge quarterback for next year, I'd say 99.9% with certainty, Brian Callahan said that to her in their little sit-down meetings. So then when Brian Callahan tells the media, well, I didn't say that, somebody's lying. And again, where would Aditi get that from? Like she would just make it up? Which I have a hard time believing that to be the case either. But again, if this is what they do, they sign a bridge quarterback. So Mac Jones is the quarterback. Though I did like what Mac Jones did on Sunday. But Mac Jones is the quarterback and they draft Shedeur Sanders. I mean, you better win with Mac Jones or else you're gone. And then the next head coach and general manager will inherit your quarterback that you drafted, whether it's Sanders or Ward. And if you draft Sanders or Ward's starting. But they're going to inherit that guy. And you guys are not, they could suck. Every game be terrible from Ward or Sanders. And all they're going to want is a coach to maximize him. Because again, we've been through this. This coach was hired to maximize the guy they've already given up on. The coach before that was hired to maximize Mariota, who, quite frankly, is a bust. But that's how the NFL works. More of your phones at 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Plus, I have got to commend somebody that has earned it. I loved it. We'll get to it next. Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game. Let's talk Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I love Hiller. They take great care of my home, and they can do the exact same for you. In fact, Hiller pretty much did a little renovation at my home, and Hiller pretty much saved the day using electrical and HVAC work, and we added a bunch of square footage to my house, and I couldn't have done it without Hiller. Hiller has been in business since 1990 and is family owned and operated, led by Jimmy Hiller, who was recently named among the most admired CEOs because of the way he truly cares for his team and clients. And I can back that up because, again, I know Jimmy Hiller and I use Hiller at my home. Hiller offers true transparency pricing, which means that Hiller will line item every part of the job up front so a homeowner can easily understand what they're paying for and why. Visit happyhiller.com because if you're not happy, the service is free. Happy you'll be here. The service is free. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller, call the Happy Face Truck today.
about penalties and turnovers being
Again, those aren't things that I concern myself with. I again try to do the best job I can and do it until they people in charge tell me that either they want me to do it or they don't, and that's the best way I can go about it. I just try to do the best I can every single day, and those are conversations that they happen, and you keep going. So I don't really think too much about it. I focus on trying to get the football team ready to play and keep trying to coach to the best of my ability and keep trying to lead the team as best I can. So again, those aren't anything that I really focus on. And when the time comes to, move on to the next part, we move on to the next part.
Good job by Brian Callahan to, again, avoid getting into all the chatter about keeping his job, losing his job. But I got to give some credit where credit is due. Ian, did you see the article from Gentry Estes?
Heard about this
in the
one.
Tennessean? I want to say Friday, maybe. The dates all with the holidays and everything. I can't keep
maybe
up
Monday after the game.
Something like that. Yeah, I think it was Monday. He said it's time to move on from Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker. Way to go, Gentry! And I mean, it was a spanking. It was 1,000-word spanking about how bad everything's been, about the sunshine pumping, about the toxic positivity, about how bad the team sucks, about the checked every box, about the ball didn't bounce our way, all of it. And I'm glad to see some people are finally coming around. And in the case of Gentry, he's not afraid to say it. Some people are afraid to say it because they don't want to piss the team off and they don't want to get the funny looks when they walk in the building. And some people, like Joe Rexroad, are afraid to say it because I don't. His whole thing is, well, Amy should know. And if Amy has better information than us, then Amy should know not to fire them. So I'm assuming that Amy knows something. I'm like, what? Amy doesn't know her rear end from last Tuesday when it comes to this stuff. They talk about this. So bravo, Gentry. So add Gentry to the list with Robbie and Big Joe and Chase and Jared. And I don't know who else. I don't know what side of the fence Vingan's on, but his two buddies are, talk about Excuse City, our midday show. Woof. But it's time. So add Gentry to the list. One texter says they need to get Kirk Cousins to be the bridge for 2 years. You guys do know Kirk Cousins sucks right now, right? And is coming off of an Achilles injury. And I hate to say this, but he and Ryan Tannehill were in the same draft. So they're roughly the same age. Don't you think he'd be better off with Ryan Tannehill? Again, he didn't play football this year, but he's healthy. Kirk Cousins coming off of an Achilles is toast. Both of them are not good, but I'm telling you, the idea of shilling out $45 million for Cousins is ridiculous. And I would not do that. Dylan says, I swear, if one more person says that we should get Derek Carr, I'm going to lose my mind. I agree with most of that stuff. I think that Derek Carr stinks. And I also think that the Saints are going to keep Derek Carr. So all this talk about Derek Carr, it's like the Sam Darnold talk. I was saying in October, they're going to franchise tag him. And Paul was like, but the cap says it's too much to be able to tag with the cap and the and now it's like, oh, they're going to franchise tag him. Which, by the way, Ian, I do think I deserve a victory lap on Sam Darnold. Named to the Pro Bowl today.
Pro Bowler.
You got to give me my due on Sam Darnold. I said before the year that I was willing to die on the Sam Darnold hill, that I would admit it. If he stunk, I would admit it, and I would own it, and he made the Pro Bowl. I'm just saying. Will on Music Row says, Jared, I moved here in 2015 and became a Titans fan immediately. Things weren't great, but then got great. Some hosts on the station have claimed this is the worst situation the franchise has ever been in. Can you compare and contrast and put that into context for me? I had immense optimism with J-Rob and zero optimism currently. Look, Floyd said that the 2015 team was the worst collection of talent he's ever seen in 40 years of being around the NFL. So between that and this year, I think this team sucks and they don't have a right tackle and it was poorly constructed and a lot of the guys that they told you were good aren't good and all of that. But I don't think this team was as bad as the 2015 team that had Antonio Andrews as a starting running back. So then the question has to be, is this worse that you have a better team, supposedly, and the results are the same? And I don't know which side of the coin you take on that. That team had less talent. This team stinks just as much, if not more. I mean, that team in 2015 beat Drew Brees in New Orleans. This team has beaten Tyler Huntley, a terrible Texan team. And don't even get me started on the Patriots, because I told you when they won that game, I was like, no, don't win. Oh, no. Everyone's like, you want to lose, Jared. I'm like, I just empty calorie win. Billy says, I wouldn't allow Rand to come back in the building after Sunday. Amy needs to do some deep cleaning and fire everyone. This team might be the worst the Titans have ever been since I watched. We are closer to 0-17 than we are to 4-13. Depends on who you want. One texter says, are we sure Rand is not in his office playing Madden GM mode with the Titans? I don't even know what Rand does, to be honest with you. Like, I mean, they're watching tape? And this is the best you come up with? I don't know. I got a lot of questions. You know, this L'Jarius Sneed thing that TD put out there, that he had surgery and was in a brace in the locker room. There's a lot of questions I got on this. What happened to week-to-week injury? What happened to I could be out there tomorrow? Now he's in a brace. He's missed the whole year. And I got a high-end doctor who takes care of NFL players in town telling me, yeah, none of this is what they're saying adds up. One texter says, please no Pat McAfee love. Is this in reference to the podcast I did with Matt Overton, where I said good for him on calling out the Colts? Good for him. Okay, that's it for us. We are headed to the Sugar Bowl in New Orleans. I don't know who sponsors it. Is it still Allstate, Ian? I think it is.
That sounds right.
We are headed to the Allstate Sugar Bowl, Georgia versus Notre Dame. Ian, you think we get a good game today?
Yeah, I think so.
Who do you think wins?
Good question. I don't know about this Georgia backup quarterback.
I don't either, but I'll still take Georgia. I'll take Georgia. It's a playoff-uary special. Enjoy. We'll be back at halftime.